When considering a cure for death, we have to think about the root cause. Considering that 90% of people in industrialized nations will die of old age, it's natural to think that we shouldn't do much at all. After all, life expectancy is increasing all the time. It has been since, 1543, and we just don't have the data before that, but we can safely assume that the pattern was consistent. However, trends with increasing life expectancy may not be what you think they are. Think of your great-great-great-grandchildren. No, great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Children born in around 2100. How old do you think they'll live to be? 105, 110? On average, 81.6. If that sounds unimpressive, it's because it is. In all of the 21st century, we will see less than 15 years in global life expectancy improvement. That is significantly lower than the last 3 centuries. So, how can we specifically target aging to increase life expectancy from the root cause? Well, one of the core processes in aging that we should be targeting is macroautophagy, which I'll shorten here to autophagy since it's the most common type. Autophagy is when your cells don't have enough nutrients, so a complex called mTORC1 doesn't have a phosphate compound to give to a protein called ATG13. This triggers an autophagisome, I'll get it one day, enclosing food from the inside of the cell. The food is organelles, old or damaged cell machinery that you can no longer use effectively. The autophagisome combines with a lysosome, the stomach of the cell, and fuses to form a cleverly titled autolysosome, which then digests the organelles and gives you nutrients. It also protects against cellular senescence because it stops those organelles from malfunctioning and damaging the cell. Or triggers cellular senescence if it only autophagizes certain substrates. It depends on who you ask. Autophagy is a really complex, nuanced, and often paradoxical process. For example, autophagy for a really long time was believed to inhibit cell death. That is, rather than apoptosis, which is when a cell commits suicide to protect other cells when it goes evil and bad or just has a mutation or damage. We believe that autophagy inhibits that. However, then we started seeing autophagy cell death, which was cell death accompanied by crazy, uncontrolled autophagy and the digestion of all the nutrients it can find from within the cell. Weird. We don't know if the autophagy is triggering cell death, but what we do know is that when apoptosis is disabled, damaged cells will use autophagy-related genes to commit suicide anyway. This may seem like a bad thing. After all, we're trying to trigger autophagy here. Why would we want to do that if it's going to kill cells? Let's take a look at the role of apoptosis in aging. As we age, certain cell types get really bad at apoptosis. They don't want to kill themselves when they should. This leads to cellular senescence, which is zombie cells that are damaged and send out signals to other cells that can inflame them and cause cancer. It also includes cancer cells themselves, like the famous Henrietta Lacks cells that just couldn't die. However, other cell types get a little too good at apoptosis and start killing themselves when they shouldn't. This leads to neurodegenerative disease when your brain cells start doing it, immune system deficiencies when your immune cells are doing it. It can also negatively impact your heart and even your skeletal muscles. Because of this inconsistency, it's hard to know whether we should be increasing or decreasing apoptosis if we want to cure aging. That's why autophagy is so promising. Because it sometimes promotes and sometimes protects against cell death, it may be the case that it will just regulate it, that it will take cells that should be killing themselves and encourage them to do so, and take other cells that don't have any damage and prevent autophagy by digesting the signals that may be inducing cell death. But how are we going to trigger autophagy? Right now, a popular way to do it is with intermittent fasting. However, that's obviously not a perfect system. How can we pharmacologically cause our cells to engage in autophagy in a way that's predictable, controlled, and preferably only takes place during short periods of time? And what would happen if we did? Well, you may have seen in my 2 videos ago, I described an experiment I did right here in this garage. Well, drains are in, but I'm in a garage. Basically, I took tiny microscopic worms called C. elegans and I triggered uncontrolled autophagy. You can watch the other video if you want to learn more, but they lived much longer and yet had cells dying left and right, especially in their intestines and gonads. This was because of too much apoptosis where it didn't need to be happening. However, the apoptosis where it should have been happening was why it lived so long. If we could use short periods of time with that kind of uncontrolled autophagy, uncontrolled autophagy, we could trigger only the right amount that we need to possibly live much, much longer than we currently do. One promising way to trigger autophagy is with a small molecule called NV-6297. it is shown to be effective at inhibiting mTORC1, which is what we need to deactivate if we want autophagy to happen, but not similar and nearby compound mTORC2. This is important. When we inhibit mTORC2 on accident, we get all kinds of unwanted side effects like hyperglycemia, hypertension, all the hypers. We don't want those. So it only inhibits mTORC1. That's good. It's much more pharmacokinetic than other similar molecules, and it's 100% orally bioavailable. That means if you took it in a pill, 100% of it would have the impact you want. That's really good. It also has a half-life of 2.3 hours, which is pretty ideal for something like this, considering we want short-term, controlled, uncontrolled autophagy. So, could this on its own cure death? Of course not. It's just basically intermittent fasting in a pill, and probably much more extreme in its effect, but nothing that dramatic. But what would happen if we combine this with another caloric restriction mimetic, a drug that mimics the effects of caloric restriction? Or what if we used this and a secondary approach that would, say, lengthen telomeres or increase NAD+? By enhancing autophagy, we are allowing any other longevity-related process to be twice, 3 times as impactful because we're cleaning up any accidental damage and enhancing the effects. I personally believe that NV-6297 or some other similar mTORC1 inhibitor is part of the future of longevity. Do you agree? Let me know in the comments below, and feel free to harass me, compliment me, or ask any questions you have whatsoever to katieannsilverman@gmail.com. Or check out my Medium article on this at my Medium, katiesilverman.medium.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.